Hello, Gears and Gaming fans, and welcome to episode 5 of the Gears Intel podcast, a Gears of War fan show covering all aspects of the franchise and things Gears of War adjacent. My name is KDB, and joining me as always are my fellow Gears Intel squad members. First, he may have a passion for hitting the fairways on a fine spring evening, but nothing compares to the virtual thrill he gets from Tiger Woods' PGA Tour 2004. He's ready to tee off and drive his Gears takes into your ears, always looking for a cog hole-in-one. It's David Smiley. Hello, David.
I like that. Very an aggressive start, but I'm all for it.
I wanted to see how many golf puns I could get in there. Probably could get going for another 5 lines. But, and also joining us is the current reigning, defending, undisputed heavyweight Le Champion of the A Winner As You gaming draft series, host of the Video Game Hall of Fame podcast, and CEO of the official Adam Cole fan club. He's here today. He's here today to judge Gears of War with his no-nonsense takes. But remember, it's all from a place of love. It is Alex Aldridge. Hello, Alex.
How do? What a day to be talking about this video game. We are recording this on Easter Sunday, a Christian day, a religion of judgment, and what are we talking about? A bit of judgment.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep. Absolutely apt.
Not the judgment I wish we were talking about, but that's a very different video game.
Yes, thank you both for joining me. So, right, what are we doing today? So this is our first gaming retrospective for Gears of War. So it's a big episode. It's a big moment for Gears Intel. Today we're going to be covering the 4th game in the franchise and the first spin-off, as Alex has said, Gears of War Judgment. As we previously mentioned on the previous episode, we're covering Gears Media in chronological order within the timeline, as close to as we can. So yeah, that's why we're covering Gears of War Judgment today. But first, before we get started, housekeeping. There's not a lot to say. All I wanted to say is if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, please do, because not only can you watch video versions of this podcast, you can see me trudge my way through Gears of War Judgment, as our Let's Play series is now complete for the game, which includes the Aftermath section as well. So go and check out those videos and you can see my first experience with the game in a few years as it happened. And we're going to continue to bring Let's Plays and other videos and stuff to the channel in due course. And that's it really for housekeeping. We're going to crack on. David, we do have one piece of news. I'm going to hand it over to you for the cog hole and the Gears of War headlines.
Kick the mouldy rope ladder down the cog hole and climb inside for a quick skulk around the bottom of the hole. The piece of news we have for you today in the cog hole is John Spaeths, is that pronounced properly?
That's correct, yeah.
Has been announced as writer for the Netflix Gears movie and a Variety exclusive.
Yeah, so
he's quite a big name, right?
So he's what I would call a mid to upper tier TV and Hollywood writer.
I was looking through his IMDb and it's I wonder, apart from maybe Dune, which he seems to be involved in the screenplay, it's a lot of movies that seem that I would suspect made a lot of money, maybe didn't review the best. Is that fair? So we've got The Mummy, we've got A Flight to Remember, we've got Passengers, we've got Doctor Strange, Prometheus, Darkest Hour.
Yeah, so
Darkest Hour, nice.
The Darkest Hour, yeah. So he's kind of leaned more towards like a fantasy and sci-fi writer.
Yes,
he's a big sci-fi nerd, but he is considered like I say, mid to upper tier Hollywood talent. I'm a big fan of him because I first discovered him through his work on Prometheus, which is a film in the Alien franchise, which some people dislike. I love it. I absolutely love Prometheus. I think I've watched it about 10 times. And he wrote the first draft of that movie, and then it was tweaked slightly by Damon Lindelof. I'm one of these people that, like, when I really love a movie or something, I will go and watch as much behind the scenes of it as I can. And I've watched John Spaeth talk at length about his process and Prometheus and other stuff he's done. And yeah, he is a really talented chap. And I think, though he's not worked on the biggest movies of all time. To me, when I heard that Netflix were going to do this movie, I thought the writer would just be a complete random, a complete unknown, or somebody having their first stab at a movie, which is often what happens with this Netflix stuff. But it's not. He is an established name, and the main thing it tells me is that they're spending a bit of money. It's a good sign. I mean, it could still be terrible, as we know, but I just take this as a good sign that he's been snapped up. Alex, do you
reckon it's about? Sorry, Alex, before you jump in fact, feel free to jump in alongside this. Do you think this is about as big a name as they could have attached to this franchise? You were talking about him being a mid to upper tier.
Yeah,
is this about as big as it gets for the Gears franchise?
I mean, I feel like they could have. When we were theorizing and doing our wish list stuff before, we talked about shows like The Boys and stuff like that. They could have gone that route and snapped up one of those guys to get involved, or somebody with a maybe more successful Amazon show, and they could have snapped them over or something. But they're not going to get, they're not going to get these big time Hollywood writers and directors. It's always going to be like a, for want of a better phrase, a jobbing writer. But it's surprised. This is bigger than I expected for them to get.
Definitely.
I suppose is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I wonder if the goalposts have now changed, given the success of The Last of Us, on what people expect from this type of show.
And the Super Mario Brothers movie has just become the biggest animated movie of all time in terms of finances. Now, obviously, this is not necessarily going to be, it's not an animated movie, but the buzz going around at the moment is the two most successful things of the year so far in TV and film are based on video games. So producers and
nobody saw that coming ever.
Yeah, they're going to be looking at that. So yeah.
Sorry,
Alex, did you have any thoughts on John Spaeths or what this means for Gears Netflix?
I think I don't really have too many thoughts. I think it gives it an air of legitimacy.
Yes,
he's got pedigree in the right genres. He has done some big things. That should hopefully bring on other notable people, you'd hope. But other than that, wait and see. I'm not a big Prometheus fan. I was quite disappointed in it, actually. But I don't know. I don't have any opinions of it right now. Like I say, it gives it legitimacy. It's a good start.
Yeah,
it's better than no name writers.
I think just with the expectations being so low, it's nice. Yeah. It's a nice surprise.
An announcement that people recognise is a great start.
Yeah. Cool. That's it for the Gears of War news for the Cockhold. Thank you, David. We're going to crack straight on and get into the main topic because we've got a lot to go over today. So, yes, as mentioned, we're covering Gears of War Judgment. I do have a bit of spiel about the game here before we get going, so just bear with me. So, yeah. Right. Gears of War Judgment, first announced at E3 2021. It's the spin-off game in the Gears of War franchise with a story set during the early period of the Locust War, not long after Emergence Day, which places it approximately 14 years before the story of the very first game. It was developed by People Can Fly under supervision from Epic Games, published by Microsoft Studios for the Xbox 360, released on March the 19th, 2013. The game featured... oh, was it really? There you go. Did you get this for your birthday, Alex?
I did not. No, I did not.
The game featured tweaks to the usual Gears of War gameplay, both across the campaign and the multiplayer. Upon release, it received positive reactions from critics, but underperformed commercially, selling 1 million copies by August 2013 that year, with many fans at the time feeling a little bit disappointed with some of the direction the game took. What we're going to do today is focus on the campaign. So this is going to be part 1 of our Gears of War Judgment retrospective. So we're going to focus on the campaign, and then we are going to follow up with some multiplayer talk in a subsequent episode. So today is all about, it's a more broad look at it and the unique aspects that the campaign brought, and we'll talk about the multiplayer later, because there is stuff to say about the multiplayer. But yes, let's start with first experiences. Now, prior to the podcast today, David, what was your first awareness or experience with Gears of War Judgment? Had you played it previously, or was this the first time through? And yeah, what was your first reaction?
I guess what talking exclusively about our feelings previous to this game. Yes, I'd played it before, and my memories of it was that it basically what you've described. It wasn't received too well. It was sort of people were maybe saying it was certainly a bit tired looking or feeling, sorry, or even it had just sort of lost its way a little bit.
What prior?
I remember. Sorry,
prior to this, you mean?
Yeah, so prior to your playthrough recently, so did you play it before? Yeah.
But I remember enjoying it, and I remember having a great time with it. I guess we're going to get into it, going back to it again. Recently, like this weekend.
Indeed.
I can instantly see what people were talking about back in the time. Like I've got a lot of it. I think overall it was a decent. I enjoyed the sort of moment to moment combat because it's Gears of War and it's as good as it just sort of ever has been. But everything sort of wrapped around the game I found quite dull and boring, if I'm totally honest.
Yeah, I've mentioned before. I'm not going to retread too much, but this game came out at like the height of my Gears of War fandom. Like I was really, really obsessed. I remember I'd moved to Bristol a few years before, and like Gears 3 was basically all I was playing on the Xbox 360 for about 2 years. And then when this game came out, I just switched to this, and my brothers and I both jumped to this. I bought them copies and sent it to them, and I did go hard on this game, and I definitely saw some of the issues, but it didn't harm really my experience or enjoyment of the game. I played this game a lot when it came out, and then I don't think I played it again until like a couple of years ago, and that was maybe to just sort of dabble and jump back in and have a look at it. And then it isn't until prior to this podcast where I played it through fully again and got it with fresh eyes, the context of the recent games and everything like that. So it's going to be exciting to talk about. Alex, did you have prior experience with Judgment before playing it for the podcast?
I did, yes. This must have come out while I was... What year did it come out again? 2013?
2013, yep.
Okay, so I don't remember how I got a hold of it, but I did the same thing that I did with most of the Gears games, is with my friend Bear. We played it through in co-op. And I remember at the time thinking it was quite novel in the way that it had tried to change up a couple of aspects of, I guess, the way you should approach each level or each combat scenario, I guess. But I do think, having played it now, that co-op has probably clouded any critical opinion I could have had, because everything's better in co-op.
Yeah.
You know, surgery probably is better if there's somebody lying next to you getting it as well. So, yeah. First time around, thought it was really great. Second time around, I think this is easily the worst Gears of War game there is. I think it's actually a bad video game. I cannot believe IGN gave this 9.2, by the way.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely mad. I remember looking at the reviews and thinking, as David kind of alluded to, like, oh yeah, people were kind of fed up with Gears at this point. It seemed, they farmed it out to a secondary developer who made Bulletstorm, which is an incredible video game that I have a lot of fondness for. And I expected, when I looked for the review scores, for this to be like really low. But seeing things like 9s and higher was astounding to me.
Yeah, it's critically almost across the board, like positively received. And before this podcast, I went and watched a few. I saw IGN's, I watched and read their review, and I read some other stuff from other websites, and it was generally praised for the changing up that it did, I think, and maybe that freshness in certain areas made certain things get overlooked, because this is and there's going to be lots to say in a bit. There's some stuff about this game I think is really good and I really enjoy, and then there's some stuff that I'm just like, yikes, that's kind of, like you say, it's bad. I don't know broadly when we finish up today if I'm going to come away from this calling it overall a bad video game, but there are some fundamental problems. And yeah, like I say, we're going to be honest, we're going to be authentic with our opinions. We've got our reasons. That's what we like to do. We're not just going to sit here and trash talk stuff, but that's the point of this podcast, is to get into the weeds.
To hear you both saying that the game was praised for its sort of departure from the sort of standard Gears of War format, because I think if you were to give me an elevator pitch on what this game is and what's different about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a cool sort of side cut a like what do you call it, like spin off from the Gears of War series, and it makes for an interesting game. But actually playing it is something very, very different.
I think I said to you, didn't I, that the things that they added to this game are ideas and very little else. They are a variable to a combat encounter, and a scoring system. That's it. They're just ideas. They're not fundamental like development changes. They have just plopped this on top of what is not actually a Gears of War experience when you boil it down to how the game is laid out. Like moment to moment, the way that it flows, the number or lack thereof of set pieces and key moments. This is not a Gears of War video game at all, if you look at it from that perspective. And when you read like this verdict from IGN, right, it says People Can Fly is exactly what Gears of War needed. The Bulletstorm developer brings in bold new energy to Epic Games' excellent but overly familiar action series. It presents such refreshing and disruptive ideas to Gears of War Judgment's campaign that it has an effect comparable to the originals in 2006.
Yeah, I mean,
get
there's things I like about this game. I would not go that far. I mean, that's now. I'm generally not a fan of IGN's reviews anyway. They're a bit all
Can't spell ignorant without IGN.
But you know, you say it's not a Gears of War game. I mean, it is a Gears of War game. It's got Gears of War in the title, and
it feels like Gears, but it doesn't.
There's some key things
play out in that way.
I think I'm going to talk about it when we get to gameplay in a bit, because there's like I say, I've got some things to say. They're definitely not all bad. I got some big praise to give it as well.
Oh,
for
me
certain
neither.
aspects.
Me neither.
What we're going to do, so first experience and stuff out the way. We're going to start with the story.
I've got one, before we go into story,
Sorry,
can
David,
I just pop in one more first experience that I think this
it.
is just a maybe either I'm older or the game's older type thing, maybe both. The camera shake when you were roadie running made me feel borderline sick.
Yeah, thank you.
Has it always been that mad? Like,
that's exactly what I thought the entire time. I thought, am I getting older? Am I like those muscles in your ears or whatever, the bones in my ears are wearing down, and it's like going on a roller coaster now? But why do I feel motion sick playing?
Never had that
Thank
in
you
memory
so
of
much
playing a Gears game.
I almost went to the doctors about that. You know what I'm like. I can't handle the roadie running Gears Judgment, Doc. What's going wrong?
Listen, there is no dispute that we're all getting older and more decrepit, but that being said, it definitely felt kind of ramped up and off, and some things about this game and the way it moves and stuff like that is there's things to say there, but yes, you're not wrong, David. But let's start with, I say, the story. Now, let's give a quick summary here. So as I've mentioned, early in the Locust War, soon after E-Day, so we've got Kilo Squad. They're accused of treason by Colonel Ezra Loomis. Lieutenant Damon Baird leaves Private Augustus Cole, Sophia Hendrick and Garen Paddock in a battle against the Locust in Halvo Bay, during which they steal experimental coalition of ordered government's technology in an effort to take down Locust General Khan and his mount, the Shibboleth. And this story, for the most part of the game, is told through a series of flashbacks and courtroom testimony. That's how it plays out structure-wise. I have a few things to say. I'm going to start with saying that the story is extremely thin on the ground. But Alex, what's your thoughts, highs and lows, any standout moments or general thoughts on the flashback and testimony structure? Does this game work as a prequel? Whatever you want to do, take it away for the story of Gears of War Judgment.
Okay, so on paper, the flashback trial element does work. In execution, I'm not entirely sure about that. I find it quite funny that the Colonel sort of brings him in and basically says, like, you are definitely losing this trial. Get on with it before I shoot you. And then just lets them tell a story without really any interjection, no objections. No, Phoenix Wright would be spinning in his grave if he was alive in that universe and subsequently died. Really, I really don't mind at all. I really like the way that they have it so that if you take on the what are they called? The way that you can affect the game.
Declassify.
That's when you can do the declassify elements. I love how they then kind of add a little bit on top of that and sort of say, well, here's why we only had X or Y. I think some of those things are total bollocks, but we'll get into that later. I want to be able to see the video game, please. Well, that's not a fun thing to add in. How about this bit, but you can't see anything?
Which happens like 4 times.
Yeah, they
I noped out after the
rehashing,
first one, like, come
didn't
on. I think this game suffers the most story-wise in that the additional characters they've put in. I mean, I know Gears of War has been accused of like having sort of caricature characters. You know, you've got the gruff guy in Marcus, you've got the cocky, sarcastic guy in Baird.
Yeah.
You've got a really enthusiastic guy who's kind of stupid in Cole.
Yeah.
But in this case, like Sarah Plain and Tall, what's her name? Sophia, like
yeah.
one of the blandest characters I think they've ever had in this series. Like she offers absolutely nothing to it. I didn't really like Paddock either. I thought he was again a bit
controversial.
a bit too angry and miserable and moany. Although he was the better of the two that they added in there.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I have with the story, though, like I say, I like the idea of it. I like the fact that it kind of cuts back to the courtroom, and then they're all telling their story, and then it's sort of playing out that way. It just seems like nothing really happened in what they're telling you.
Yeah.
Until the very end, where they steal this light mass bomb, and then they use it on General Khan. Except he doesn't die from it.
No.
Meaning the entire trial and the reasons behind why they've been brought to the trial was a complete waste of everybody's time, and we'll just shoot him with some Lancer fire, because apparently that is more devastating than a light mass bomb to the face. That it definitely takes full on. He's right there. They drop it on him. Then later on, he just busts out there on his little mountain. Yeah. So I think fundamentally the story is not that interesting. I don't think it's written very well. I don't think the characters are that interesting. And it seemingly is a complete waste of time because nothing actually happens. Like, it doesn't affect anything moving into Gears 1. I would rather this was set during Emergence Day rather than right after it, and then people are getting a slap on the wrist from some complete wanker who we find out got a statue later, which would have been more interesting if they sort of delved more into how that happened and how people somehow saw this guy as the good guy when realistically he's just like, you know, basic evil man, says evil things because he's authority and boo to authority. I've got not a lot of good things to say about the story. Not a lot at all.
So I take your points, and there's story-wise, there's a lot in there I agree with. What I will say is, on the flip side, I'm going to get to this in a minute, some of the character stuff, you know, looking at it, you know,
the
looking at it
relationship
closely.
between Baird and Cole is fine. Like, I'm always going to
it,
enjoy some of that.
The character stuff is, I did take away some stuff, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. So, but just overall wise with the story, you're right, really. I mean, not a lot happens in this game. And for Gears of War, where the story has always been a big part of it, no matter what people say, this game, its focus is just the gaming experience. The story, the cutscenes, everything that happens are so brief and so short. And
I was saying to David, I think that the most like frequent cutscene I can remember from this game is people kicking or chainsawing or opening a door.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't know which way around they did it. I don't know if they wrote the story first and then built the game around it. But if they did it the other way round, then the gameplay development side of it has really hampered the story that they can tell.
Yeah.
Because there are no set pieces. It's just wave attacks. And we defended some armor from some guy. But there's no big worm thing. There's no real boss fights. There's nothing catastrophic that happens. There's no krill.
There's not even really a running. You like through all the Gears of War mainline games. There's a sort of running thread going through it. There's not even really that. I don't think too much of it is. You're right. It's just set piece after like not even set piece. Like combat room after combat room, sort of bolted together.
Yeah,
yeah.
And you could almost put it in any order, and the story would make as much sense.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. You know, I put in my notes, its biggest problem is it lacks in set pieces completely. And
there's nothing memorable in it at all.
There's nothing really to hold on to, no memorable moments. Character stuff I'm going to get to. I think and one of my biggest issues is because there's no set pieces, and you mentioned there's no bosses, there is a huge lack of focus in the story on Khan himself, because he appears, I think, like possibly once, maybe twice.
He sort of walks past them, doesn't it?
In cutscenes, he doesn't even have. I don't even think he has any dialogue. Maybe
No.
some in the battle at the end, but
Yeah.
So the story is almost perilous because there's no main villain, there's no main threat. You're just listening to them chat about what they did and kind of what they got up to and all this. So it's got this flashback approach, which, like you say, is fine, and it adds some nice connectivity and stuff like that. And you already you have the issue that it's a prequel, so you know that Cold and Bear don't die. So again, there's a lack of peril there. So that's a prequel thing they've got to deal with. So lacking in that peril, lacking in a bad guy, and no real threat or big moments to hang on to, it makes the story not forgettable. There's no story to forget. Nothing really happens. And I think, that being said, it is supported by some good character stuff, which I know I keep saying I'm going to get to, but it's playing this again recently, I was surprised at how little story there was.
I think I was too. I think I remembered it differently than it actually
Yeah, and I've... To put sort of my cards on the table maybe a little bit too soon, I've always felt in my mind, since playing it for the first time, that this game just felt like a DLC package rather than a full game, which...
It's like a mercenaries mode, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. It felt like the big, most substantial DLC for Gears 3 that there was, because it's you got so much in there. So with DLC, you sort of think, oh, I can maybe let it go that it doesn't have this, it's just DLC. But it wasn't. This was released as a big game. And I do wonder if it started life as a DLC, because there's just not much going on here in the way of the story. It does have...
Did I see that it cost like $60 million to make that?
It did, and I think a lot of that money probably went into the tech side of things, which we'll get to.
We will get to that, and that will be a not negative part, everybody who's fed up of moaning already.
Yes. So
it's funny, because I was going... I was going somewhere... yesterday. I was going to my parents yesterday, that's right. And I wasn't going to be driving. And I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll take the Gears of War retrospective and I'll have a read about what they have to say about Gears Judgment. Because I'm really interested to see about the development. It's one page. I read it before we even got out the front door. I was like, oh, well, that's that then.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's this sort of red-headed stepchild that nobody really mentions it in Epic anymore, or the Coalition. Sorry. Yeah.
Now, to its credit... it's kind of funny, we're doing this in chronological order for kind of a reason, and I, at the time when I played this, this was Khan's first appearance, but we've just come off the back of reading The Rise of Ram, which Khan is in, and with the context of Rise of Ram, you get a bit more about Khan, and you could say, going from that review that we've done to this, there's something to hang on to, but... because you see what basically happened after that and what he went on to do, and you're like, oh yeah, I can see the path here, I can see the thread. But Rise of Ram didn't come out until like 6 years after this game, so it wasn't there originally. So I think the story has always been thin on the ground, and it's a shame. It's not it. I don't want to call it bad, because there's no story to criticize.
I think the worst thing about it is that it's pointless.
Yeah, what does
there
it
are some
add?
moments that are fine, but there's even a moment where Baird says to the Colonel, oh yeah, we've saved a couple of thousand people, but we could have saved millions more. I know, if we hadn't nicked the light mass bomb, it would have had a much greater purpose, and it didn't even kill the thing you nicked it for.
Yeah.
All of it was pointless.
Yeah.
And then he lets them off at the end anyways. Oh, you're demoted, you twat. Go and get out of here, you scamp. And that's kind of it. And then they build the guy a statue.
Yeah.
Like, there's no consequence. There's no point.
It's a shame. Like, I almost didn't start with story because I knew it was going to go this way. But it is a shame. It is thinner than I remember. But it's not like they packed a story in here that I'm now ripping apart. It's just there's so little to rip apart because nothing happens, as you say. So this is a game that focuses more just about the gameplay and arcadey experience rather than the story. Yes, David. Story. Anything to add?
Not overly. I think you and Alex have largely ticked all the boxes I think I would have come to this conversation with. It's totally thin on the ground. It's a bit of nothing. I was trying to think. I was actually meaning to Google while you were chatting there, but I got caught up in listening to what you're saying. When the Dragon Age games were coming out, because I wondered if this was a bit of a theme. Dragon Age 2 or 3? 2. one of the Dragon Age
Inquisition,
games,
right?
Inquisition does the same flashback storytelling, and I just wondered if it was a bit of a theme of the era, which it may well have been. But yeah, it was interesting, and I guess like the only sort of stuff I've got to add is sort of tying the story, you know, like the bit of stories when you take on the extra difficulty modifier and stuff into better gameplay stuff. So I guess we'll come to that when we get there. The Karn stuff is a bit disappointing because he's such a cool enemy sort of protagonist,
cool design,
in the comic.
Enjoyed him,
and
in
he
that.
just sort of goes out like a wet fart in this, which is a bit of a shame. But I guess.
What about, David, the aftermath section? So this is the point of the game where what happens is you finish up the Judgment campaign and then you play this extra bonus mode which flash forwards to Gears 3 to kind of tie up loose ends of Judgment. Do you have any thoughts about the inclusion of the aftermath section?
Before he does that, this wasn't DLC, was it?
It just unlocked when you finished the campaign.
Right, okay.
I'm actually interested to see what you guys think of it as well. I did this game in basically a single sitting.
Yeah.
The whole thing. And I don't know whether it was this story is also a bit thin, or by the time I was finishing this off, my brain had just switched off from boredom of the previous story. But yeah, it was all right. I mean, like it plugged a couple holes. It explained a couple what happened to the girl. I've already forgotten her name.
Sophia.
Kinda. Yeah. It was okay.
Hey, you knock a boat off of a top of a hotel or something. I mean, this was proper, at least proper Gears. Like it was.
Yeah, right. Ridiculous.
It has, and it has the zip line section as well. Like, you know,
that wasn't long enough. It just kind of ended after that. Didn't it?
It did. That was a hard out, wasn't it? Because I was not expecting that to be done. Then it was just like woof, done, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's
It was better. It was better in my opinion.
Yeah. It's also weird to talk about this because I don't have the context of Gears 3 fresh in my mind either. So it's sort of you're thrown into this and you're like, okay, I know that's where I am, but I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure how much I can kind of say about it. But really, the main thing you get out of it is obviously Paddock appears and he comes back and he mentions what happened to Sophia. You see the statue of Loomis and it ties up those ends. It's a decent epilogue, but personally, I just think the work that went into this section could have just been put into the main game to add more scenes into the main game and, as we mentioned, give it some of those set pieces that it lacked.
It felt like something that was meant to be in the main game and they cut it because they're like, this doesn't really serve much of a purpose.
Yeah, it wouldn't have fitted to the way that they tried to do the arcade style stuff either, I don't think, because it wasn't a room where you put turrets down and wait for them to come and attack you.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, this
traditional
whole
linear blast through areas and do these set pieces.
Story wise, this whole experience just seems to me. I don't know. I'm not going to call it a stake because I like the Gears universe, but it's no like it's not going to win any Oscars. So like, I don't know. To me, like it's like Gears is like going out for a Burger King, and you know what you like. You like I don't know, like you like a Whopper meal. And then with the first part of this game, you order your Whopper meal and they've just given you some mouldy bread. And then with the Aftermath campaign, you
could choose to have mouldy bread or not. You have to go up to the thing on the wall. It's like,
would
you like to eat this burger with mouldy bread for extra stars?
And then the Aftermath campaign, they've given you the meat and nothing else. Like they've sort of like it's better than what you've just given me, but it's still not what I asked for.
Yeah, it's a fair it's a fair way to put it. You know, there's times I will, you know, in defense of Gears, there's times where I'll say it's of much higher quality than something like a Burger King. But here, I was just kind of baffled playing this and thinking, with all the lacking of the main story, I just don't know why the time and development time that went into Aftermath couldn't have been put into the main game to add more stuff to see. Like the as I've mentioned, the Khan stuff, the lacking in Khan is my biggest criticism. So that frustrated me. This could have just been this. Why, you know, I'm saying, was this game, did it all those years ago maybe just start off all completely as DLC for Gears 3? Because this is essentially DLC for Gears 3, this Aftermath section. That's what this is.
Yeah, that definitely felt that way.
I wonder if they built from that and then this game appeared and they said, hey, we've got enough to make a full game here and sell it for, you know, 40 quid, 50 quid or whatever it was. So yeah, it felt like the Aftermath stuff had some of the Gears flavour. It's hard to put your finger on it sometimes, but yes, it's definitely different and stood apart from the main
felt more
campaign.
Gearsy, I think, than sort of the main Judgment campaign.
Yeah.
Did.
Yeah,
Which
like
confused me, if anything.
It's
kind of
it's
you've
jarring.
gone back to old Gears again. You've ditched off all your silliness, and you thought, actually, maybe we are better off just doing silly things.
Yeah.
Sliding down zip lines.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, right, okay. I think we've been maybe as harsh as we can be on the story for now, but let's move on. Alex, why don't you start? Actually, no, David, you start. She went last time. So, characters. Tell me, expanding on from the story, specific characters, any highlights or comments about the additional characters or Cole or Bed or anybody that showed up in this game. What's your thoughts?
I'm sort of trying to think of this. So I've also just come recently off finishing the first book, so I'm trying to think, because like a lot of that, and not to be, I guess, not spoilers for future podcasts that we've got coming, but like there's a chunk of that book that's sort of stuck with me about how they go into discussing how sort of Baird's brashness works, or how it comes off, or why he is how he is. They're trying to sort of apply that to what we see in him here, and I think largely it works in that regard. Like it does sort of paint a bit more of a picture of why Baird is so jaded, and sort of why he's stuck around, but also why he is not sort of happy with the cog, and how that frustration sort of manifests itself.
That's
so
true,
I think
yeah.
the sort of Baird and Cole aspect are, I'm not even sure. The Baird, certainly. Cole, not sure. He didn't feel very Coley to me, if I'm totally honest. He was okay, but I don't sort of remember a lot of wisecracking, like shrieking and hollering, running about. Maybe he did, and I just missed it. He wasn't sort of the fun-loving Cole that you sort of learn to love in.
He was way more
Gears.
serious in this.
He did. Felt much more serious. That's where I'm going. And the Russian dude, I've forgotten their names. Sorry,
Paddock.
their names are not sticking. Paddock.
Paddock.
I didn't really think there was much to him, other than he had a bit of a Ruski accent, and the girl who was, again, tell me her name.
Sophia.
Sophia, her entire character arc seemed to be that she had sex with a teacher once, and that was it.
So
Yeah, she was a bit of a goody two shoes, and then kind of wasn't.
Yeah, hey, she's not.
Hey, she's with the lads now.
coming away from this game, so it's funny to hear you both talk about Paddock and not be fans, because I think he's the MVP of this game. And
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
So he is a big representation of like a huge moment in the franchise, as we know. So the Pendulum Wars ended, the UIR and the COG fighting each other, and I think he presents that, having been pissed off to have to work with the COG really well.
And why does he?
Why does he what? Sorry.
Why does he have to work with the COG? Why
So
is he
basically, because they won the war, there's this thing called. There was a program the COG did. It's like where they offered to take the enemy into them, I guess, and not put them in prison or something like that.
Right.
Come to us.
I forget what it's called. It's called the something program or something project. I want to call it the friend program, but it's not that. So he's basically chosen that, and he's a guy that the reason he has these scars is from because of the COG and the weapons that they've used and stuff.
Yeah.
He does have that classic Russian.
He's still in his UIR gear.
It has that colour, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's definitely different to the COG stuff that everybody else is wearing.
Yeah, it has the sort of shades of the UIR stuff. It can be maybe a bit cliche, the sort of hard nut, Eastern European Russian.
That's kind of what I was
guy.
getting at earlier. Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the characters in this game, we've mentioned Cole doesn't feel like he has the impact that he usually does, and Sophia unfortunately doesn't make a huge impact. Baird, I think, is strong. Paddock, I think, is the MVP.
Yeah.
And maybe, because there's not too much to hold on to, I'm making him sound more interesting than he actually is. But I do think anytime he spoke or any sort of crack he made and stuff, I thought it was strong. I thought, him also saving Loomis towards the end just kind of... It's nice that people have morals. I think that's important with the story. They can't just be psychos and mental cases. He saved Loomis. I think Paddock has redeeming factors, and he's an interesting character, and I like that. I thought it was very clear that he had been put in a situation that he didn't really want to be in, but he basically didn't have any other choice, I guess, either be in prison or die.
Very, very clear. He made that clear a lot.
Yeah.
He is a catalyst for some excellent weapons, which we will get to later. That was my favourite thing about him.
Sophia is an interesting one because she brings all the potential of like a rookie arc, you know. She's a rookie and then could lead to becoming the hero, but it just doesn't pay off. And then criminally and almost inexcusably, it's not paid off in Aftermath either. It's paid off with a throwaway line: she was kidnapped. So she doesn't even get an arc. Her story has no closure. And it's like, okay, it's nice to say, well, maybe she's out there somewhere in the universe, but we're in the Gears franchise. We're many years ahead now. She's
gone full Maria. You know that as soon as you hear her say them say that, you know that's
and it's
what's happened. Surely,
yeah.
I think
she wasn't COG either, was she? Because she's a cadet with what's she with?
Special Forces. I sort of assumed
she's kidnapped by the COG. That's the big moment, isn't it? When he holds up the COG tags. And it's like, your lads did it. Well, he doesn't say like that.
Your people or something.
So she okay. I when he said you did this, I sort of assumed he was blaming the COG at large. Yeah, not that they had actually come along and taken her off. Because I assumed she would have had COG tags. I thought it was her COG tags. They were
no, he said he did, like, he couldn't kill the guy who kidnapped her.
Yeah,
or something like that. But he killed someone.
Yeah, you're asking me to pick out the line now. I'm not
sure.
He
he basically said like he managed to get one of the kidnappers or something, and then he dropped this. He says,
yes,
and he holds up his COG tags as in he's a member of the COG that kidnapped him. It was your lot that did.
Oh,
this.
Right, okay. So I've clearly picked that up wrongly. So because in my head, what had happened was that was her COG tags, and it was like that was like the symbolism that she was dead.
No, I think
because he had her tags, right? I get you now.
He mentioned something about
that makes a bit more interest. Why would they take her off? Sorry,
he was what we don't know. I mean, and could
reading program.
Could Paddock be lying, because he has a vendetta against the COG, potentially? He mentioned something about looking for his sniper rifle, I think. I'm sure. So I guess he sniped one of the kidnappers.
I think he says something like that. Yeah, he couldn't kill all of them or something.
But
that almost annoys me more because that makes no sense now why they're just carting her off.
So it's, well, the COG, they're not known to be perfect. They're always up to shady things. But the payoff isn't there, as we know. This is what I'm saying.
They talk about, I know
not
I just
explained.
shouted it out without context, but I think it's at Gears 3 they speak about there being a breeding program, so it could be that she was taken off
potentially. So it's just frustrating that you're establishing new characters, you don't really give them time to shine, and then you damage their impact as a character by not adding closure. It's one of the sort of most annoying things in stories sometimes that you can do. So, I didn't dislike her as a character, and I think she has a couple of nice lines of dialogue and some back and forth, but it's not. It's kind of wasted, and it doesn't make the impact that I would have liked it to. I think, David, you touched on Baird. I think Baird's as strong as ever. I think he's, again, the performance is really, really good. It always is with Baird. And Cole is less of an impact. Loomis, just quickly, just to touch on him. So I think, again, Alex, you said that it's like, bad guy says this or asshole says this. I think there is a little bit more to Loomis. This idea that this war is happening. He's persisting. He's so desperate to keep control. So he's persisting with this trial while the whole place is being attacked. Just kind of shows he's lost his grasp and he's lost control, but he's determined to remain stoic and keep his chest puffed up. And then he legs it like a little bitch later on. There's something there, and I think that's again, you could maybe say that's a bit tropey, but then he sort of bursts out of the door later and then comes and does the final blow with his pistol, but that's not really enough to redeem him. There was something to him. I thought he was, the way he looked was interesting as well, with his facial hair and his hair. He had, he had a good silhouette, and I didn't
like Vince McMahon, didn't he?
Yeah,
No,
he looked to me like and I assumed it was deliberate. He looked to me like a sort of suit with a Gears uniform slapped on, like he was totally out of his depth, not up for the war that's about to come, and he was sort of all about the pen. He's a bit of a pen pusher.
Yeah. Yes, there was a. what was the bit that so basically he's persisting having the trial, and the soldiers are kicking open the door basically saying they're getting attacked, and we're having the trial, and the building's shaking, he's brushing his dust off his desk and stuff like that.
I think he has an all right line at that point, doesn't he, where he's like, you need to get back to the fight, and he's like, they're right at the front door. He's like, wait, you haven't got to go very far then, have you?
He seemed to be like the sort of anti-Hoffman, like in everything, like they sort of took Hoffman's characteristics and inverted them.
This is a situation he's never really been prepared for, but he's trying to save face. So I got that.
Have you ever really seen Band of Brothers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not for ages.
David Schwimmer's character, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's my favourite TV show of all time.
Okay, fair, yeah.
Absolutely love that.
I don't think I've watched it since it was on, so that was a long time ago now. But
he reminded me of that, like a sort of almost snivelling stickler for the rules.
Yeah.
In spite of the morale and the underlying intricacies of war and how war actually plays out.
Yeah.
The
no ability to sort of roll with the moment.
Precisely.
No, exactly.
And when it comes down to action, he's a coward.
The words on the statue from Aftermath are, "The hero of Halvo Bay, where others fled, he remained," which is quite funny because it's the complete opposite of what he does.
Yep.
So I did enjoy that. So yeah, I'm not going to bat for the characters. I think there is some more in here that I'd like to give it credit for. Like I say, I'm a big fan of Paddock, and I think that's only strengthened through his appearance in Aftermath as well. I just think there's some wasted potential with Sophia and the villain, as I've mentioned. But yeah, Alex,
big time with the villain.
Do you have any thoughts on characters in general? Any highs and lows, or what do you think?
I think any, much that's not already been said. I think, like I say, Loomis, at the end of it was all for nothing, really. Even though he was right. I mean, he's proven right by the end, and Baird even admits to Loomis that, you were right.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have done this. It didn't even work. So, again, like I say, it renders most of it pointless, because at that point, when it's been proven that it was right and it wouldn't work, all that happens is Baird gets demoted, and Loomis kind of apologises and walks off and says, I'm cutting the trial off.
Yeah.
But I don't like you. I think you're right in terms of like how Paddock is, of all the new additions, the best of them. I just think that the writing is not strong enough to make him anything other than a bit generic, grumpy, kind of like being forced against his will to fight the fight, but will do it anyway because he's a man of honor, blah blah blah.
Well, what this game's lacking is I think with introductions of Paddock and Sophia, if they're going to do flashbacks, and like I say, we're lacking set pieces and context, and I think more things could have been added. I would have liked to have seen Paddock before and what he was like before, but again, you're stuck with him in this mindset that he is throughout the entire game.
Like, how did you come to be in this Kilo squad? How did it end up like this? Why are you standing by these men? But instead, it just kind of like he just tells the next bit of the story, and we went to this next room, and I found one of my sniper rifles, and then we had a fight in a wherever it was, restaurant or whatever.
Alex, do you think this game suffers due to a lack of Marcus Phoenix?
No, I don't think it does. I just think it suffers from a lack of interesting writing and set pieces, as we said earlier on. There's just like I remember from all of this. I remember the moment where you get a boat off the roof in the thing that's not even actually the main game. I don't remember a lot of the key bits from the actual campaign of Judgment, because it all seems so similar.
I think I've only got like 2. So
So I don't have any issue with there not being a Marcus Phoenix in there. I know that they obviously give a little nod to him towards the end.
They
hear
do.
him over the comms.
I think, like you said, the game is such a breeze, so there's no chance to feel his absence, which is kind of ironic.
I know, right? $60 million on a 6-act campaign that lasts probably that many hours max.
David, what about Marcus Phoenix? Do you feel like the game suffers because there's no Marcus Phoenix character?
No, I agree with you too. I don't see what adding a Marcus Phoenix to the situation really helps. The interesting thing about Marcus Phoenix is sort of his I was going to say stoic resignation to ridiculous situations he finds himself in. And I don't think that the situations sort of presented to the player in Judgment really would play on his strengths, to be quite honest. So I don't see that adding him to this makes it a better game in any meaningful way, really.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it was cool to give Baird the opportunity to be that, because he's the main character, if you like. I mean, this, you obviously jump around and play as the other characters, but Baird gets the most sort of, I was going to say screen time, but you're in control of him more than the others. And I think you're right about Baird. It does do a lot to show his pissed off. He has his sort of snarkiness here in this game, but that's obviously amped up later in his life, and it's the situation here and the way he's treated, and then obviously I think with the aftermath stuff as well, that does help, because we see Baird in 4 and 5 even older and taking the piss even more and kind of going his own way even more. This was nice. It was a nice, if we're going to say what does this game add, I do think it does add something for Baird, and I think, and we got Paddock out of it, and I want to give it its props for that. But that being said, as we've talked about with the story and these character moments, there's just not enough of it. It's a shame.
Yeah.
Because
I'd be perfectly happy if the trial went against them. I mean, we start Gears 1 with Marcus in prison.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, it's not an irreparable situation if they somehow kill one of them in the trial. Yeah. Have Loomis shoot Sophia through the face. She brings nothing to the table anyway. So let's get some real heat on the guy.
I think we could improve this, Alex. I'm fully on board with you, because I would quite happily have that guy Loomis kill someone and then him be killed himself, and then he could be the hero of Halvo Bay, dying in action, and they can let Baird off to go and sort of escape his trial because the people that found him guilty have all died, and
and then he's put in prison, and then the guy, the locust burst into the courtroom, and now you've got to get out of there, rather than
it would
a quick cutscene of them fighting their way to the front door and then a boss fight and done.
It would at least make it more memorable, and I think it would do the thing basically that Rogue One does, where it just Star Wars Rogue One, where it's like, where the hell are all these characters in the future of Star Wars? And spoilers, they're all dead.
They are dead. Yeah.
So yeah, you could have absolutely taken out Sophia or somebody like that as just as something to grasp onto, as an unexpected moment. And the game is lacking in that, and it's a shame. It's a shame, because I do think there's glimmers of potential in there. It's just not expanded upon enough.
Oh yeah, like I say, at the design phase on paper, they're all in a trial because they did something bad, and it's going to be told through flashbacks, and they're going to be in a live ongoing trial.
All
Fine,
with that.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah,
but they just whiffed it.
Yeah, like you say, good ideas, but just execution not as good as it could be. Though, let's move on to more about how those ideas were executed and any other new things the game brought, and that is gameplay. So gameplay for Gears of War Judgment. Let's consider things like, obviously we got the arcadey style of this game, the declassify system, which we've touched on a little bit already. We could talk more about that. And of course, the big thing that this game does is it changes the controls. David, why don't you start? What's your thoughts on the gameplay of Gears of War Judgment? Anything that stick out to you? Anything you didn't like, or anything you did enjoy?
I think we're going to be running over a lot of old ground here, but I think that, again, like I said earlier, the elevator pitch for me in the gameplay, sort of setting up combat scenarios that are very in places that are almost horde-like, it's interesting, and I would be okay on board with that. The implementation of it, I think, is quite dull, and they don't go far enough. Like the difficulty modifiers, for example, I think is a great idea, but they don't give me a reason beyond. I mean, they don't give me a reason to care about having 3 stars, particularly.
No, they don't.
So why would I bother? So I started off doing it, and then I would read the difficulty modifier and think, if it doesn't look fun, I'm just not going to do it, because I can't be bothered.
Absolutely.
And but they can make that useful. I mean, like I said, it's like they have sort of some good ideas, and I think in cases they don't quite run far enough with it. Like, for example, like I was saying, it's almost horde-like. Like, getting more stars could give you resources which you could take into the next area to then actually implement the horde gameplay a little bit more, and you could spend it on more turret guns, you could spend it on upgrading the area before people attack, and that gives you a risk reward on selecting the difficulty modifier rather than just saying, well, you get more stars. Why? Why do I want more stars? I mean, I think Alex and I spoke about this. He played this in co-op, and I do think I might be less down on this if I played it in co-op this second time round, because then I can see a scenario in which, like, we're playing thinking, right, I want to get 3 stars. We want to make the game a bit more challenging, adding difficulty modifiers to it, which again are a great idea. There's not enough of them because they start recycling them. It's already it's actually not a short game, but I was going to say it's an already short game, but it's an already brief experience that within the brief experience they're recycling ideas. And Alex and I just covered Titanfall 2 recently in a podcast, and that's a game that has some ideas, implements the ideas, then moves on to the new idea. This game doesn't do that. It just keeps going over the same old ground again and again and again, and it doesn't go far enough. Like, you want it to go 110%, and it's going 50. And it's leaving so much room for improvement, which is a shame, because it could have been a spin-off that was interesting in this sort of score attack, multiplayer centric, co-op centric thing that encouraged people, because horde mode is one of my favourite parts of Gears of War, and they just don't do it enough.
Huge bearing on why the game plays the way that it does.
The
popularity of horde mode.
Yes. So
spot on, mate.
The arcadey nature of this game, I completely agree. It's a shame it doesn't go far enough, because Gears 5 added an arcade mode to its like social play for multiplayer, which had things that, like, it was like easier to get headshots and stuff, and the scoring system was different stuff, and that I enjoyed playing. They eventually took it away because lots of people didn't enjoy it and it wasn't played enough. I don't mind when video games want to be like video games, score systems and stars and stuff like that. I quite like challenging myself and to get stars and to rerun a level, but as you say, there's no reward beyond that, and the declassify stuff, although it does mix it up and it is good on paper, it doesn't offer enough of a reason to do it. And when you get to having to do the same type of thing the 4th time, it's really just like, oh, that's annoying. Why should I bother doing that? I don't like it when games force you to use certain weapons, but at least with the declassify stuff, you have the option, I suppose. So it says you only have to use pistols, and you think, well,
sometimes that was actually quite enjoyable.
So and it's good that it gives you the choice. And
other times it was bollocks, because I remember there was one where it said you can only use shotguns, like Sword Off and Nasher, and then the voiceover was like, oh, we'd run out of all of our ammo, so all we had was shotguns. And then every cutscene within that story is them lancering doors open. What? I've picked up ammo for the shotguns in the same boxes.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
So I suppose what I'm trying to say is I do like arcadey nature stuff, and I think, we mentioned before we started recording Resident Evil 4 Remake, that has a system in place which the original game did, that when you finish a chapter, it tells you how many enemies you killed and how many times you died and stuff. I quite like that, and it's not
Devil May Cry stuff as well. Like, it's all about getting S ranks and stuff like that.
Some people can find that stuff maybe immersion breaking, but no, I'm all for it, and it's just again, it's that glimmer of hope and a glimmer of something really good that's never fully kind of realised and to its full potential. I like that it pops up and it shows you the scores that your friends have got as you're playing. I think that's a neat little feature. So it says how many headshots so-and-so got or how many kills they've made. Because what then that does is, if you're not playing online multiplayer, you're still able to kind of compete with your friends and see, oh, okay, they're halfway through this section and they've got 20 headshots. Or, like my brother's name kept popping up while I was playing it.
David's name was popping up for me, but you hadn't even played it yet. You'd obviously seen it from the first time.
Because I was getting yours, because I will admit that was probably that was a really cool feature, because I would come up
and style, isn't it?
Yes,
I'd be closing in on Alex's headshot count, and I'd be like, oh, I need to overtake him.
Yeah,
nice.
And for a game that is so specifically built on just battle room to battle room to battle room. That could give you something, and then, like I say, I think it wins points there. The other big thing, and then Alex, I'll hand it over to you, is this game fundamentally changes how Gears of War controls in terms of the weapon switching. So they moved away from the D-pad weapon switching to Call of Duty.
I kept doing that.
To basically, you just press Y to switch weapon and you throw your grenade with RB or whatever it is. Which,
LB.
or whatever. And they, at the time, was seen as kind of sacrilegious, because it's...
Oh, was it?
Yeah, because there's so much about this is still Gears, you've got the roadie run the cover and all that, and it's like, all that's the same. Oh, but how you change weapons is different, and how you change the grenade is different. And I think I can see frustrations. You get used to it. It doesn't really matter. Like, you'll get used to it after 15 minutes.
It doesn't bother me too much.
It's quite clear this game, so this game came out 2013. Call of Duty, it still is. I was at the time. It's the biggest game on the planet. That I think they wanted to take away a learning curve for potential new players and just implemented shooter controls.
Fine.
Yeah.
Remember the absolute meltdown in certain sections of the internet, probably in corners of Twitter, had when they added a sprint button to Halo. Like, it's just modernising the game and bringing it in line with what people expect from a game of this type.
Yeah. So I was going to say, it does not bother me at all. It's just, but it was seen by some people as a kind of pointless change, and subsequent games have obviously reverted back to the other way, to the more classic style.
I want to try and be fair. What would people be upset about that being? Is it just it's not like it used to be, or was there a specific gameplay reason for it being worse?
So
I don't like that you only have two guns.
Yeah.
I like always having a pistol, and they took that out of it.
One thing,
getting the bolt hook is the highlight of every Gears game.
Yeah. One thing to bear in mind about Gears of War is it has a huge multiplayer scene. It has a huge esports scene. To suddenly give them these are people that are hardcore competitive online.
Yeah.
To suddenly give them the game that they've been playing for years, and then make them have to readjust and change how they control. They're not happy about that. Like I say, for me, it doesn't really bother me because I will just adjust to it, and I'm not really competing for the top spot on the leaderboards. But there are people out there, there's people that take the control systems very seriously, and they were not happy about it. But to me, it's less of an issue. But I did find myself trying to, do certain things. The first time I fired it up, and I was just like having to sort of rewire my brain because I played Gears 5 like not too long ago, so I get it, but I just don't think it's that big of an issue. Alex, gameplay thoughts, highs and lows, what do you think?
Well, firstly, just adding on to what we were just talking about there, I don't think I'm going to go to bat for any game that makes me select a grenade to use as a primary attack rather than have a button specifically for grenades.
Yeah,
the only issue I have with that in this is that I couldn't figure out how to put grenades on walls.
So you can't. Nope. All you can do is...
I didn't like that, especially when you're supposed to be setting up for a wave coming, and I'm sitting there swinging a grenade, standing in face to face with a wall. Like, what button is going to do this? It's not going to throw a grenade at myself.
You can't do it. Yep, they removed the feature. If you throw it at an enemy, it sticks to them. That's okay. As far as you can get with it.
Other than that, the gameplay, the game feels perfectly fine.
Sure,
It's still very, very gory. I think the crimson. I know we're going to talk about visuals in a minute, but the crimson in this is its most crimson I think it's ever been. It was really nice to see how vibrant the blood was.
Yeah.
I liked quite a lot of the new weapons. I really liked the breach shot. Yeah. And I loved that sniper that Paddock introduces. It's basically just like a semi-auto sniper with about 70 bullets in the magazine. But the biggest problem I have with the arcade style is that the adjustments that it's made to the moment-to-moment gameplay seemingly forced the hand of the developers to take anything interesting out of the combat and just make it all like cluster rooms full of wretches plus guys with cleavers plus just every single encounter was like set up a turret gun or two, hunker down in a square room where nothing exciting is going to happen. You're just going to get like overwhelmed by enemies for ages, and you might have to protect something at some point as well, which was very like early Destiny, where you just get to an area, fucking Peter Dinklage is going to go open a door for 20 minutes, so you've got to stand there and make sure he doesn't get well, it just felt like they lost all sense of imagination with it. It's just there was nothing of interest. Like I said earlier, you're not cutting your way through the guts of a worm. You're not seeing like rivers of emulsion. You're not even in the Aftermath stuff where you're sliding down railings and shooting stuff with a pistol. There's no vehicle sections. Like it just removed anything that they could have done other than, as I said right at the beginning of this, adding a variable and a scoring system. That's it. It's like you can vary the gameplay somewhat by limiting the guns you have or making you blind, which might help you get these pointless stars that no one's going to care about if you brag about it. But where's the excitement? Where's the how you implement this into how Gears already plays to make initial like original style Gears more exciting because of what you've added. Whereas in this scenario, you've taken out what made initial Gears exciting and plopped on just,
more enemies.
Use a shotgun. Here's 50 guys. Go. And I really was disappointed in how that played. It just became so monotonous after like you're just cycling through the same thing.
Yeah.
Even though I love the way Gears feels. Like I love it. I love the headshots. I love the cover systems. I love all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you can melee with a Lancer as well as do the charge up, because I don't think that's been in every game. At least I can't remember it from the OGs. If you had a Lancer, you couldn't do a quick melee like you could with a shotgun.
Yeah.
So there were elements there that it felt right. It's just that nothing was going on that made it worth even existing. I think
you're right about the variation thing, because other Gears games have these kind of fun little segments, like the odd, I don't know if I want to call it puzzle, but there's moments here and there, like use this car for cover, blow up these gas canisters. The spotlight stuff with Dom in Game 1 comes to mind. The stuff with the Krill. That I would have liked more immersive stuff like that. In here, I think this game, like you say, that it's just those battle sections. I think there's one part towards the end where you have to plant explosives on a wall, and it's like, this is cool, something else to do. But then, that was it.
And they don't really signpost that all that well either. I planted all the explosives and was like, what? Why is it not? What do we do now? And then I didn't realise I had to actually go prime them as well.
Yeah, I did that.
I had to go back one by one and have to redo all of it.
Yeah, so it's a shame because monotonous. I see what you're saying, and we're going to get to this in a minute, but I think what this game went out of its way to do more than anything was to try to be a technical showcase, and it lacks a lot of variation in, stuff to do. Which, is disappointing. But kind of included
four
in this.
games in, that's inexcusable for me.
Yeah,
I know it's been a new developer, but I've played Bulletstorm, and Bulletstorm is so imaginative. It's full of wacky, crazy ideas and just balls to the wall, batshit set pieces. This has none of that.
Yeah. As I said, it feels very much like DLC. It doesn't do enough. It just feels like a little bonus snack.
Definitely.
Something that's kind of included in gameplay is the introduction of new Locust, which is the Rager. And I just wanted to know what you both thought about this, which is this kind of like, one way to describe it, it's kind of like a mini... oh shit! Why is my mind blanking? Berserker. It's like a mini Berserker. They come out these like drone guys with the breach shots, and then you shoot them, and then they transform, and then they just run towards you. This game has a couple of new creatures. I think it's the first appearance of the Shrieker as well, which is like the Krang-like thing that flies around and shoots you.
I think so. Or was that 3?
Maybe they were in 3. I think you're right. I do have... Let me just have a quick look at my...
Yeah, you did note down
my notes
first
here.
Appearances, didn't you?
Yeah, okay, no, the Shriekers must have been in 3 as well. But yeah, so it is the first appearance of the Rager, which is kind of like the biggest addition. And I guess they appeared here and then just died out because they're not in any of the other games. They were all killed by the COG. But yeah, David, did you have any thoughts on the Rager? Because this game, you said you got through it in one sitting. I died a couple of times, maybe 3 times. Once was, I think, to the Reavers shooting me with rockets, and then I died twice to ragers to these guys, which is sort of, it's nice to see new creatures, but did you have any trouble with them, or did you have anything else, with these battle sequences, or any other the Locust that gave you any issues throughout playing it?
I guess to try and give the Ragers some credit, I quite like them insofar as there's specific ways there's sort of a bit of a tactical approach to them. There's a lot of enemies in the Gears universe where you just got to pile bullets into it till it dies.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, you actually had to think about it. Like, if you shoot it in the head, you can kill it outright if you're accurate and smart enough. And if not, they turn it into this other thing. And I'm going to forget the name. What are the locusts that come out and they're riding on the back of this thing? They're sort of on a mount.
The blood mount.
Yeah, that's it. They sort of become an almost blood mount light in that they're interesting insofar as they become this thing that is so aggressive. Your cover in a cover shooter, there's something designed to get you out of cover.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite a smart thing. So I think ultimately I thought they were okay. I enjoyed them, and they had a dynamic to them that I quite liked. If I carried on, I would just start repeating myself. But yeah, there's a way to take them out that I think is different from other enemies in the Gears universe. Yeah. So I quite appreciated them.
Yeah, we also had, Alex kind of briefly touched on it already, so the weapons we had added to this game were the Bushka, the breech shot, the Marks and sniper rifle, the stim grenade as well. It was the first use of the stim grenade, which is...
Didn't know what it did, so never used it. What does it do?
It heals you when you chuck it down.
It heals you. There is a declassify section, I think, once where your health doesn't regenerate, and that is the only time I use the stim grenades, because... You're going.
I noped out of that declassify immediately seeing that.
You're going. Nah. Yeah, and I made it my mission. I actually got the achievement, or posted about it on the Gears Intel Twitter account. The achievement for do every declassify, and I think I'd done a bunch of them in the past, but this time I just did every single one because I wanted to see, what they were like. But yeah, so stim grenades are in this game, and they were handy during that section. Didn't use them at any other point during the game.
Swap them out as soon as you can.
Yeah, the Bushka is obviously the one that fires the
it's a grenade launcher, really.
Yeah, basically. And breech shot.
Quite
and
enjoyed
sniper
that.
Rifle. And
who knew that you could kill a berserker with a scorcher? What was all the Hammer of Dawn nonsense?
It was funny.
Get it outside under the saddle, mate. Just use a flamethrower like we did 20 years ago.
Yeah. So this game does a couple of things like that, like I say, which raises questions about stuff in the future. But I don't know. Maybe it's Berserker version 1 or something.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe they've evolved to be flame resistant. Or whatever.
Yeah.
What did everybody else think? Because like I said a couple of times, I really liked these new guns. Breach shot, I thought when I started, I think I got 3 headshots in a row with one. I was like, hello, I'm liking this. I loved that sniper rifle because the what's it called, long shot, being so slow after every single shot, especially in a Gears game, which I do like. I think in co-op I love being the sniper in a Gears game because again, I think I've said it on other podcasts, like the Gears of War headshot noise visuals is one of the most satisfying in video games. But you're often only ever getting like 6 bullets for it, but this one you're getting like 70. Yeah. And if you've done a perfect reload, you can just pop heads left and right with real rapid succession. And I loved that part of it, but I don't know what anybody else thought about the new guns.
Yeah, I'm not really a sniper player in multiplayer. I'm definitely more shotgun.
I'm not in multiplayer.
Lancer type.
No chance.
Because I guess because I'm just terrible. I take ages, so by the time I've found someone to snipe, it doesn't work. But yeah, it's something like the breech shot, and even the Marks of sniper rifle as well. It allows you to just snipe, basically have a bit of snipe gameplay, but faster, and makes it more fun. And this game where you are dealing with, you're very rarely dealing with one type of enemy in the locations. It's usually always 3 or 4 different types coming at you at once. So wretches. Drones,
wretches
boomers.
That take cover, right? Did anybody else notice that? They kept taking cover in my one.
The wretches?
Yeah. Hiding behind little cabinets. Like, what are you doing? You haven't got a gun to use behind there. Come out and have a fight, you dickhead.
So it's just nice to, unfortunately you can't hold more than 2 weapons, but exactly. You can't really do one thing. This game does make you to try the different weapons, and because it's throwing so much at you all the time. moment to moment, which I think has kind of been said, in a vacuum, gameplay's fine, good fun. Like weapons are fun to use, and you get some, some good gunplay. It's just, it's the stuff around that makes it feel not as worth it, I suppose.
And also, I mean, I didn't really experience any, but David saw a lot of bugs.
Yeah.
And
So
crashes.
I was going to ask you about that, David, because we're going to move on to presentation in a sec. But gameplay-wise, did you experience any issues with maybe AI?
In my first couple hours, I had like 3 hard crashes. I had to reset.
Really?
The game.
Okay.
And I got about halfway through the game, and I was saying to Alex the other day that you two were very nearly recording this podcast on your own because, like I say, I got about halfway through the game. It hard crashed, so I reset it, reloaded the game, and then the game told me I didn't have a save data.
Oh,
and I was like, I am not doing this again.
Yeah.
So, but then I closed it and restarted again, and it worked. So
It's Series X, isn't it? So
yeah, you would think it would be okay, but yeah, I encountered a few bugs, and there was quite a couple. I don't know, these ones were more funny than anything else. It was just like enemies getting stuck in, I assume, death animations that looked like they were breakdancing.
Yeah.
And then there was 2 locusts that just followed me around for 5-10 minutes, like just through the streets. It was on the level where they had the victory parade, sort of half finished, but on E-Day, and I heard I was actually shooting them, and then I heard the noise.
yeah, oh right, okay. I was going to
finished
ask
the
if you'd heard the
section.
noise. Yeah,
Yeah, and then I was like, but they're still there. So he was like running around, and he was like run to the side. And I was watching him, and every so often he was holding a sword, but every so often he would just go like that, like he was holding a gun that wasn't there. And then he'd like twiddle off sideways like he was crab walking, and then he ran behind a car, and then I saw at the corner of my eye like another guy coming from a different car, and I was like, how did he get there? And then I noticed they sort of got together, and then they were just following me as I was going through the level. So I just had these little pet locusts that I couldn't kill. They weren't interested in killing me, so we just
if they'd have become your allies or something, that'd have been amazing.
I'd been brilliant.
Yeah.
It's kind of on the flip side of that. I had issues with just the squad AI, and I don't know what you guys thought, but
kept standing in my way. That's for certain.
they're either in your way or they're just not doing anything. And there's a couple of times on the Let's Play videos where I'm in a pretty intense battle, and just all 3 of them are just stood there against the wall, not doing anything. Not for like 5 seconds, for like 5 minutes. And I'm just like saying, am I going to do this on my own? And I don't know if that's a difficulty thing or if the AI changes. I played it on well, whatever is normal. Say it's casual,
standard,
normal,
is it
and
called or
hardcore.
something?
Yeah, standard.
That's reminded
standard
me.
is Resident 4. Sorry, I'm getting confused.
Yeah.
You were talking
2 games
about the AI. Did you? I got this. I wonder if you guys got this. So, like, say if you were standing next to Sophia and then you got downed, Sophia would just stand next to you and ignore you, and Cole would
run
maybe
over and
come
pick
from
you
the
up.
other side of the map,
Yeah.
just like running through berserkers and stuff,
Yeah.
trying to just like running the gauntlet when Sophia could just bend down and pick you up.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I've always enjoyed about Gears AI is that they are more reliable at revives than any human player because they are idiots and they don't care about the scenario they're going to put themselves in to beeline it to pick you up.
Yeah, that must be obviously something in the core like development of the game. It just pings the players, and whether that's random or something, it's like, quick, get over there, help your buddy. Because they do help you up, but they don't help you shoot anything. It feels like I'm killing. And then also, generally what happens is the enemies are always fixated on you, despite the fact there's 3 other COG soldiers. That like, if there's 3 ragers, they're not running at everybody else.
No.
They're all running at you.
It's proper Ellie in The Last of Us, isn't it? Everyone just ignoring her while you're in a stealth thing just to come for you.
Yeah.
I think that's probably my biggest issue with Paddock as well, because he was the one who was consistently standing in front of me.
Yeah.
Oh, and then
Like, I'm on your side now.
Yeah.
Which I did actually, speaking of voice lines as well, now we're actually finally talking about a Gears game. I do always love when you play the game and you think, like, imagine being a Gears voice actor and it's like, what are we doing today, Carl? It's like, today we're shouting wretches 25 times in different tones. Go, wretches, wretches. Just like, that's a Gears voice actor's day, is shouting the enemy names over and over again. It's brilliant.
Absolutely.
That's like 80% of a Gears game's dialogue is shouting an enemy's name.
Definitely.
Corpser! Yes, it's pretty big. I see it. I also see you in my way, Paddock. So fuck
It's another thing I mentioned a couple of times on my Let's Play is because so friendly fire got added to some of these games blend together sometimes, but I'm pretty sure in Gears 4 or 5 in that arcade mode you can have friendly fire on, so if you're playing online you can shoot your teammates. And I've joked a couple of times like, well, it's a good thing friendly fire isn't on because I'll be shooting these guys all the time. They do. They just walk straight in front of you like that.
Yeah, they don't care.
So I did notice that, which sort of brings us on to presentation. We've talked about gameplay, we've talked about story and characters, but let's move on to presentation. Graphics, visuals, audio, anything we want to talk about. This is going to be probably my most praising section of the podcast. Alex, why don't we start with you? Tell us about the graphics.
I'm just going to go turn this laptop off because I can hear it making Discord noises.
Oh, okay, fine. This bit I'll leave in.
Alex's Discord noises.
Yeah.
I actually want to add to David's talk about bugs, because I kept getting, and I'm really hoping this is not my Xbox headset, but when I was playing this through headset, I heard a lot of crackling. Did anybody else get that? Just constant, like, really, and it wasn't enemies, it wasn't the music.
Don't think so.
I didn't know how to fix it.
I didn't have that. On two separate occasions, I did have what can only be described as the loudest pop, like a huge pop sound, like, you know, when you can hear like something is just kind of like overblown, and it happened. I remember it happened once, and I thought it was my headset, and it happened again later, and it has only happened while playing Gears Judgment, so I presume it was an audio bug while I was playing.
Right,
so yeah, potentially a different version of what you got there. Bugs is kind of connected, to this graphics presentation.
Yes,
Alex, what do you think about this game? How it looks, how it sounds, and considering the three of us, we played this on Series X. Now with the Series X, you get an FPS boost.
I was just about to say, I'm assuming this has been boosted to 60 because some of the cutscenes look 30, don't they?
Yeah, so it has been boosted to 60
First time,
frames.
I think Alex, you're going to be held responsible for ruining my life, but
okay.
I'm slowly, and like frame rate is not something I ever noticed, and now because I feel like over the last 6 months there's been a distinct jump in you complaining about frame rates, and yesterday when I was, not even yesterday, Friday night when I was playing Gears, I kept noticing the some of the cutscenes were like jumpy, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no, am I seeing what I don't want to be seeing?
It's
I liked my life when I didn't see this.
It can depend game to game and stuff like that. It's a whole conversation, but yeah. So overall, Alex, what's your thoughts on presentation for Judgment? Yeah,
visually, as you alluded to just there, is by far the strongest element of the game. One of the things that I do remember reading in that one page of the Gears retrospective is that they were really impressed by how people can fly, put more of an emphasis into making the color palette more striking and vibrant. You know, Gears gets a hard rap for being brown and green and grey, and it being indicative of that era of how games looked in early HD gaming era. You know, Metal Gear Solid 4 apparently is another really bad proponent of just greys and browns. This one though, some of the vistas that you were playing in front of, again, you don't get to do anything fun to interact with these vistas,
but they look good.
But they look absolutely fantastic. The parade that David was talking about earlier looks really cool. Inside the buildings, you know, it's neither here nor there. It's a lot of, you know, back to what we'd expect. That level where you have to shoot the eggs was driving me mental. Could not find the eggs. That was doing my head in.
It's like one of the first things you have to do as well, isn't it? It's really early in the game.
Yeah. But I think I said earlier as well, like the crimson of the blood looked really cool. Really a really good looking 360 game, and especially considering, I guess this was you're probably talking PS4's released somewhere in the world by the time this came out.
It's released that year.
Very close.
That year. So
yeah. So I don't know if it had been out in Japan by that point, or at least it had definitely been shown off at E3, and we probably had a release date by the time this came out. So you're talking very, very end of the 360's life cycle. probably pushing, and a lot of money was spent on it, as I mentioned earlier. It clearly wasn't put into writing staff or level design. So, yeah, visually fantastic. Really enjoyed the way this game looks. I think it's a beautiful video game.
Yes.
Even now, and it was 60 FPS. It looks lovely.
Yeah,
apart from the roadie run, which gives you headaches.
Yeah, it
maybe that's the frame. Maybe that's the frame boost.
Yeah,
maybe the frame boost is doing that.
That is a very good point, because obviously it's such a dramatic shift in what you're seeing on the screen. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, I think there is no question how good this game looks. I think. So design-wise, as we mentioned, we've got the brighter color palette and stuff like that, and it's very Gears of War. It's got that. I'm not going to go as far as saying Art Deco, because it's not Art Deco really, but it has that kind of thing. It looks like the Gears of War universe, but brighter and more detailed. Which
actually does make canonical sense, because this is very early.
Early before everything's run down. So you're completely right. And this, I remember it looking good back at the time. It's playing it recently. I was kind of blown away with how good this looked. I think
I actually don't remember it looking that great at the time. That's not something that stood out to me. So I was actually, maybe it was you kind of putting that thought in my head when you mentioned it on Twitter or something about how good it looked. I definitely remember thinking, oh, he's right, this game is really good looking, and I don't remember that part of it at all.
So something that stood out to me this time is, while I was playing this, we've mentioned it already, Resident Evil 4 Remake released, and I watched the Digital Foundry review of all the different versions of Resident Evil 4 Remake, which has also been released on the PS4. If you watch that that tech review of Resident Evil 4 Remake on the PS4, it looks worse than this game. There's no question. Like, the textures are... It's obviously what they do is they scale it a lot these days, so they downscale a lot for the PS4. The textures and visual fidelity take such a huge hit on PS4. Some people don't mind that. They can quite happily play a game. Of course, graphics don't necessarily just make a game good or bad, but... Resident Evil 4 Remake is supposed to be a top-end new game, so they are making sacrifices to put it on PS4. You could put screenshots of that next to this game. Judgment looks better. The design style is kind of different. This is a more, again, we've said cartoony before. Resident Evil is more realistic, hyper-real. But when it comes to just looking at simple things like walls, wood, floor, here it looks fantastic, and there it looks poor. And for a 10-year-old game from 2 generations ago, I think that's amazing. And it's clear, as you say, that's where all the money went for this game. It went on the visuals, it went on the lighting. You mentioned the interior stuff. There's a couple of moments where you get God rays coming through the windows and stuff. Like, it looks nice in some of the indoor stuff as well. And it doesn't
Bulletstorm as well was a very like bright and colourful game. I'm sure they brought their expertise from that into this and implemented it perfectly.
And that for a game that's lacking in story and other tangible things to hold on to, there's loads to look at in this game, and loads to sort of gasp at it. It may not have that full-blown dark atmosphere style of the previous games, which I would say is kind of my personal preference as well, but that's a taste thing. You can't deny the technical showcase that's sort of on display here, and the cutscenes, despite being 30 frames per second, they're incredibly cinematic. I think this is the only Gears possibly that adds like black bars to it as well, to the cutscenes, which I think was probably a design choice to make it feel more cinematic. But really great cinematography with the panning shots across the locust and stuff like that. Huge kudos to that. I was very, very happy with how this game looked, and I think we're going to come away from today being it's the high point of this game, and I guess they were trying to impress in that sense when they were developing this game, and that's what their focus was, and it came at the cost of some other things. So
I don't think necessarily it came at the cost of like moment-to-moment performance. I don't think I'd noticed a lot of frame drops or anything like that.
No.
It ran pretty smoothly. I mean, we were playing it on a Series X, so 360 could be a whole different story. But I thought for now, playing it on whatever we're playing it on now, it ran really, really well.
I think
other than the bugs.
and it's perhaps the type of game they made rather than a limitation. But I think it's probably worth noting the game has less sort of interactive elements to the scenery. A lot of it's very static. So like previous Gears of War games, you can like, and maybe you can, and I just missed it, you can go around with your chainsaw cutting up desks and chairs and stuff. I tried to do that and I couldn't do that in this game. I maybe picked the wrong furniture, but it wasn't working for me.
Yeah.
And also are elements where you play with light, i.e. like with a krill that aren't in this game.
Exactly.
And also the moving vehicles about. So like there's no moving vehicles, there's the cart sections, there's the big junker sections, and then there's also the static cars that you've got to push and use as cover. None of that's in this game.
No.
So it's a much simpler game from that regard.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And yeah, it would have been nice to have that, and I think it's a shame because, and I don't know, but like I said, this game cost a lot of money to make, but maybe it was coming at that point where it was like, we're only going to put so much into this end of generation game, because people are going to be looking ahead now to what would then be Xbox One, and it wasn't something that they were focused on, and it was just like, yep, let's get a really nice looking, because Gears obviously would have been running high off the success of Gears 3. The brand name was still strong, so they are like, let's take advantage of that at the end of the 360's lifespan and just churn something out as quick as we can. Make sure it looks really, really nice as well. And, you know, that at the end of a console's lifespan, it's going to be easier to optimize stuff like that. So, of course, it's going to look better. But, yeah, it's just a big thumbs up from me, really, on how it looks. I kind of mentioned earlier as well, what the game does a lot is have many different enemies on screen at the same time, and I think that's where it's trying to show off its technical side. It's, oh look, there's like 6 different enemies you've got to deal with. Go for it, rather than just being attacked by wretches or just being attacked by 6 or 7 drones.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's basically horde the entire gameplay. You know, it's horde the game. It is. Yeah, David, so just over to you. Presentation wise, any other thoughts? What do you think about how this game looks, or sounds for that matter as well?
Yeah, I agree with you. The only other thing that I would add to that is I liked that in terms of the sound design, that they messed with how the sound sounded. Does that make sense? So like, it was very clear to me whether Baird was talking in real time or whether it was flashback Baird. And
very echoey if it was a flashback.
Yeah, I thought that was I'm not sort of, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but yeah, it's like a nice touch that you would have expected them to make, but they did it, and they did it effectively, I guess.
Alex, what about you? Any other expansions on presentation?
I don't think so. I think I've said, all that I needed to.
I'm trying to think of other Xbox 360 games that look better. There's a few, but I think quite safely I could say it's in the top 10. It might even be in the top 5 in terms of how good it looks. And again, I've mentioned atmosphere and sort of the tone that it puts out. I might have a personal preference to a game that has a different style to it, but just from like I say, the technical side, I think you will struggle to find a better looking 360 game than this. So despite the whinges that have been on display today, I think it's clear a lot of very careful work went into that side. So yeah, I think so. Props there.
I also think, I mean, Alex, you might disagree with me, KDB, you also, but like for me, the whinges come from a place that like it's usually such a high bar for a Gears game.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and it's not that I'm not playing this thinking like, well, actually, you did say it was a bad game, Alex. I don't think it's awful, and it's not offensive to me, but it's clearly the worst Gears game. Like, to me, it's not.
It's only close. It's only upwards from here. Like, it's only going to get better as we go through games from now on.
The worst Gears game, I guess, is still better than a lot of other games, as you could say.
Well, that is true. That is true. Especially a lot of games that were copying Gears.
Yeah.
This is still better than every Army of Two game ever made.
Cool. Right, well, let's start to wrap this puppy up. Final thoughts, rating out of 5. We've done it. We've talked about the campaign. We're going to talk more about the multiplayer in a separate episode, as I've said. But Alex, why don't you give us your final thoughts on Gears of War Judgment today?
Well, I think I've probably been the most down on it out of everybody. I think that's purely because, as I said at the beginning, like I didn't actually have a negative memory of this. I think I remember.
Neither did I. I was the same as you.
Yeah, and again, like having looked at the reviews, I was surprised to see how good they were. But I definitely remember there being like a slight level of discontentment around either the series being tired.
I've
or
got that memory.
It's like an average, like it's got 7s. I was expecting to see 70s on reviews, but it didn't get that. And I remember back in the day when I first played this, I must have had that thought of like, oh, this isn't a 7 out of 10 game. This is better than that. Like we're enjoying it, right? To my co-op buddy, and maybe that clouded my opinion on it because aside from like just the way that it feels like Gears, which is a credit to People Can Fly because it's not Epic that were developing this or the Coalition. This was farmed out to a secondary developer. I just feel like they didn't bring enough variation or interesting things to do, and like I say, there's nothing memorable about the campaign here. There's most memorable sections are in Aftermath because that's set up more like a traditional Gears game, which is clearly what I prefer.
Yeah.
If I was to give it a rating out of 5, I'd probably give it a 2, which I think is somewhere close to what you gave the graphic novel.
I did. I think I gave that a 2.
I definitely enjoyed reading that more than I played this.
Yeah, and I've said before that ratings and stuff and scores. I don't like that we live in a world where anything underneath a 4 out of 5 or a 9 out of 10 is considered catastrophic failure. You can really enjoy a 2 out of 5. You can really enjoy a 4 out of 10. Do you know what I'm saying? So
I popped a lot of heads with a lot of shotguns, and I found myself enjoying all of those moments. It's just there's just the substance of this game is just not there, and that's where I think it's a bad game. I look at it and think you've not got any imagination in your level design here. It's just protect this, shoot a load of this, hunker up in this square area, and that was such a letdown.
Yeah.
But also, if you want to, you can see nothing while it's happening. No. The stars thing as well, like the pointlessness of that, the pointlessness of the story. From all the things I've said, I think 2 is quite generous because that core Gears feel still pulls it together for something that's still enjoyable to play. It's not 9.2 rated, that's for sure.
Yeah. I'm gonna not remember the names, but so I think I guess the lead developer and writer of this game, or possibly the 2 writers, I read an interview with them before we did this. It's possibly with Polygon. I'll try and find it and tweet it out. But they said that they were huge fans of the game. They basically grew up the previous, sort of 8 years playing Gears, and then they were handed this, and it was like a dream come true for them because they were big fans. It was made by fans, but they kind of mandated with themselves that they were going to try something different because they were of that mindset of wanting to keep it fresh. And I think that is kind of the story of this game. Not literal story. This game is a case of trying to do stuff different, having your heart in absolutely without a doubt the right place. I've said before, as a Resident Evil fan, there's people that have handled Resident Evil IP who do not give a shit about Resident Evil and do not handle it rightly, and their heart is
nowhere near on the level of that.
No, their heart is not in the right place. This is not that. You can tell their heart's in the right place. They wanted to mix it up, try a few fresh things. I'm assuming they may have been very slightly limited by time as well, because the game sets out to do some new things, some good ideas. It's just not given enough time. You're not given enough of an experience to really explore them or do anything interesting. And it feels very, just taking the declassify system, for example, as we've said, I think that is one of the writers, I think, actually called, the quote was something like, I'm going to be so brash as to say, I'm going to call this genius. And it's sort of hard to disagree with him. It's a fantastic concept, but then when you're just doing the same thing 4 times, the vision, it's like, well, yeah, it just completely falls flat. So it's a case of wasted opportunity. It's wasted potential, I should say. Wasted potential with that. Wasted potential with the new characters, with Sophia, with Khan, who, great, we got more context to him later in a graphic novel that was released 6 years down the line. But as the main villain of the game, you need a villain in the game. You have to have a villain. And is not really present. So it's lacking in story, lacking in some character stuff. I do really like Paddock. I've got to say, I really like Paddock. I think the game is visually stunning, technical showcase, despite those bugs we mentioned. But, you know, by today's standards, you know, we were still in a time back here where games were at least playable when they came out. We get new games that come out these days and they're not even playable. So big thumbs up for that. I think it's a game that over time, for years I've always said, I liked Gears of War Judgment. I did. It was seen as the black sheep of the franchise and people are really down on it. Revisiting it, it's not as good as I remembered it to be, but I still had fun and I certainly don't hate it. And if I was going to rate it, I think I'm floating around the same area. Maybe a 2.5. I'll give it a 2.5 because I do really enjoy the visuals. We haven't really talked about the soundtrack. I think maybe I'm going to do some follow-up content another day about the soundtrack.
Fan of that.
But this is they reuse some stuff and they play off like other themes and stuff, which is kind of nice. But you know,
the soundtrack seemed confusingly eclectic. Sometimes it's cheesy guitar rock, and other times it's like the bombastic orchestral stuff, which is what I would have preferred it kept throughout.
Yeah. It
felt like they like started off with a real arcade game soundtrack. Then all of a sudden it's like, wait, this is a Gears game, isn't it? It needs to be dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's, you know, Epic stepping in and going, hang on, you're missing that part, and then it just gets sprinkled in or something like that.
I mean, they were on a hide into nothing, right? They're developing a game for a franchise that's filled its trilogy arc. It's probably having their next key numbered version developed for the new consoles coming out. It's right at the end of the 360's lifespan.
Yeah.
I don't know how much marketing it got.
To be fair, just
they had
quick,
a tough job,
just quickly,
to do something interesting with this.
Just quickly on that. So, but I went back and watched all the trailers, and this game had a very interesting marketing campaign where they got the voice actor for Baird. They got him to basically narrate trailers and explain all the new stuff that was being implemented in the game, like the star system, like Overrun. And I think it was called like the Guts of Gears or something. And they took some big steps for the marketing of this game. I think maybe because they thought it was going to slip under the radar. And it did. I think to get the voice actor involved in kind of doing... It reminds me of... I don't know if either of you remember when Halo 5 came out and they introduced like rec packs, and they got Nick Offerman to do this huge how-to video about how to use rec packs and stuff like that, and it was a big part of the marketing campaign. But yeah, I wonder if when this game was all said and done, they thought, right, we really need to push this because we need to make our money back. So it was marketed heavily. You know, it was a big deal with the trailer and the way it was revealed and stuff. But yeah, just for me to wrap up, not as good as I remember. I had fun. I mean, you know, it's fun to revisit. I don't think I'm going to play the campaign again. I'm looking forward to at some point talking about the extra stuff the multiplayer does, but it's a 2 out of 5. It's not hitting that high expectation that we have for Gears.
Exactly.
I've never played this co-op. Maybe I should someday, but yeah, it's fun. It's fine. David, over to you. We have your final thoughts on Gears of War Judgment.
When you asked us about a score, the first number that jumped into my head was a 2 as well. So I think I'm fully on board with you guys. I think there are some interesting ideas sprinkled throughout. I think it delivers on painfully few of them. I think there are interesting bat-like sort of interactions to be having with the enemies, but ultimately you're walking from enemy sort of arena to fighting arena to fighting arena to fighting arena, and the way in which it sort of traverses the player through that is recycled again and again and again. Like Alex said, I think earlier in this podcast, you do a lot of kicking open doors or cutting chains around doors. I think, and I want to be fair with this game. I think I'm feeling so down on it because the bar is so high. Was this the first Gears game that was made without Cliff Bleszinski attached to it? Yeah. So I've just not long finished his book, and I know you have too, Kelsey. The thing that jumped out to me as interesting when he was talking about making Gears is that this is almost verbatim, but I'll get the gist right, is that he didn't want to fall into a sort of habit of doing nothing but cliche characters and doing cliche moments. And I think like it's interesting hearing him say that, because I think ultimately a lot of what Gears is, as much as I love it and as much as I enjoy the story, most of it is a walking cliche. And I think this game sort of just carries that on a little bit. I don't think it develops anything in any meaningful way. And again, like thinking about Gears games to come, Alex and I don't know whether my opinion will be the same because it's been a number of years now, but I know Alex and I have spoken about it being a shame that it didn't take chances, and this one certainly attempts to swing a little bit at the fences. It just misses for me, unfortunately, but I don't want to crucify a game for not being the same as it always has been. You want a game to take chances and try and do things. I just think on this occasion, unfortunately, it lacks depth to me, and it makes me wonder if this had a tight turnaround. I don't know what the development cycle was, but there's a lot of reused stuff, and it, like you say, it's got interesting ideas that it just recycles endlessly. It feels like a game that's either, like we spoke about before, DLC, or was just on a tight turnaround. It is what it is. It's not offended me, but I've certainly no interest in going back to play it again.
It's fair.
Very fair.
Yeah, I think we're sort of all relatively on the same page. It's it's a game that I couldn't find a great deal about the turnaround time, but for me, it feels like that's a big factor. It just feels like so much of the groundwork was laid, and then it just doesn't have that depth, like you've said, David. I think you summed it up quite well there. But yeah, that's it. We've done it. We've done our first game retrospective. We're away now. More games to come. And that's going to be it for this episode. We are going to follow up with some multiplayer talk for Judgment, as I've said, and your community replies as well. Thank you for the responses so far on Twitter.
I am worried about playing multiplayer.
You can. I've played some already. Like I've played some Overrun. You can play it with bots and stuff like that. So you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, if you enjoy the show, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please do subscribe on whatever podcast feed you're listening to. Give a like on the YouTube video. Give us a review or a rating, whatever works on your podcast app of choice. Let us know your thoughts on today's topic in the comments. What did you think of Judgment? We'd love to hear from you. You can follow Gears Intel on Twitter at Gears_Intel, and you can follow us all of us individually on Twitter. David is at DavidSmiley1, Alex is at SuperThrillex, and I am at K_D_B_. Got there in the end. Thank you once again for listening today. Thank you, chaps, and remember the fallen.